So, okay, I'm going to give one more shot for John DiNardo, too.
Hello.
Good evening, John. How are you?
Hi, Michael. I'm sorry I had my ringer turned off.
Oh,
That's why I
okay.
missed your first call.
I thought that maybe you and Dr. Rand were on the phone with each other.
No, no.
All right. Well, welcome aboard. And I don't have Dr. Rand here yet. I'm having a trouble getting his line to come through for some reason. It keeps telling me it's busy. So
Oh,
I don't know if it's off the hook or what the deal is. But I'm going to try to get him on here. I got Autumn working on that now. So I figure we'll start with you. And let me welcome you back to Late Night in the Midlands. And John, we're live. People want to know about a lot of things. These booms that everybody's hearing, Jade Helm that's going on, and all these different things that are going on. Some would say it's because they're preparing, and I'd have to ask you, preparing for what?
well, I've been studying this for a long time, Michael, and what I've found is that the power elite, the men who control the world, and I won't go into details because you and your audience know all about the global ruling elite who are determined to take power and rule the world with a one world government. These men know about the approach of Planet X. They have known about it for many decades. The search for Planet X goes back to the 1970s, over 40 years ago, when the NASA, under the direction and under the orders of the power elite who have always ruled our government, NASA was ordered to send up a probe, which was two probes, which were called the Pioneer 10 and 11 space probes. Pioneer 11 was simply a control probe which was sent in the opposite direction, but Pioneer 10 was the one that was to determine was sent out to detect a gravitational pull upon this space probe Pioneer 10 as a result of their calculations of the position of this massive body which they had known was out there, which they had known for 2 centuries nearly, that was out there because it had been this mystery body called Planet X had been detected ever since the early 1800s by astronomers around the world. They had seen perturbations, irregularities, or plucking or pulling out of their orbits of the outer planets Uranus and Neptune. These are large gas giant planets, very massive. And for some object to have the gravitational pull to pull them out of their orbits, well, that mystery object must be very large. And that's what the government was very much concerned about. Uh, they had this Pioneer 10, they never released, to my knowledge, they never released the findings from the Pioneer 10's uh, space journey into deep space past Pluto into the beyond the outer bounds of our solar system. They never released the findings of this Pioneer 10, which was sent on a trajectory to pass by where they had calculated this object would be. And consequently, their reasoning was, the mission was to see if there would determine whether there was a perturbation or a pulling of this trajectory of Pioneer 10 out of its trajectory, which would indicate that there was some massive body exerting some great gravitational pull upon the Pioneer 10 space probe. And I believe they indeed found that this probe was pulled out of its trajectory. And there's so much evidence to indicate that they knew about it. There was the infrared astronomical satellite that was launched specifically to detect this massive dwarf star, which they had actually declared they were doing. They declared that they were sending this infrared astronomical satellite up back in 1983, and they actually declared the the discovery of this object, which was their mission. it was these two announcements, the launching of the infrared astronomical satellite and its discovery of Planet X were both made. These announcements were both made in the largest newspapers of the United States. One was January 30th, 1983, at the launching of the infrared astronomical satellite in the New York Times. The second announcement was when this Planet X had been discovered, and that was reported in the Washington Post in December 30th, 11 months to the day after the launching of it. So to get back to your question, they know all about it. They've been tracking it all of these decades, and they see the devastation that will occur on Earth. We see it now. We see the evidence now. We've been seeing it for over the last 10 years. Thousands of record high temperatures, thousands of record lows, thousands, literally thousands. I mean, the Weather Channel has announced this at times, and I have recorded it. Thousands of record snowfalls and record rainfalls and record large-size hailstorms, etc. So we know it's coming, and the government knows it's coming. Naturally, they're going to get ready. They're planning to clamp down on the public because, as Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota, had reported in his television documentary, which was titled Apocalypse 2012, in his conspiracy theory series, Jesse Ventura reported that they were indeed going underground into the bowels of the Cheyenne Mountain, where the NORAD headquarters had been, and they're planning to, in fact, there was a report in the Daily Mail, the London, England Daily Mail newspaper, that they're really expanding and opening up this underground Cheyenne Mountain shelter for the government. Of course, it was stated in the report that it was for the purpose of reopening it, and in fact, it had never been closed. Well, anyway, Jade Helm, I believe, is obviously a way to clamp down, a campaign to clamp down on the public, to suppress the public when food riots occur. I mean, I'm trying to be honest and not too alarmist.
Right.
But just try to be honest without exaggerating the facts. Glenn Beck, I had posted a Glenn Beck program when he was on Fox TV. I mean, that was pretty high visibility, mainstream TV a number of years ago. I think it was about 5 years ago, and he was very popular at the time. I'm not a fan of Glenn Beck, but the fact that he publicized this at least several times about food riots. He showed films of the government, U.S. troops training to suppress the public, where they were using actors, not really actors, but civilians to play the part of the civilians that would be encountered by the Army, U.S. Army, during times of food riots. And Glenn Beck said on his program, I believe the U.S. Army, I believe them when they say they're planning for food riots. I believe that there are going to be food riots. And then he went into a whole series of programs where he sat down and he said, look, what we've got to do is start storing food now, start planning to survive what's coming. Well, they took him off the air. I guess he was getting a little bit too honest. And so there's more evidence for you that the Jade Helm is a plan to suppress the population, and it may be coming soon. I'm hearing a lot of reports, and you are too, that September is some kind of a mystery date, where an ominous date where something may occur. All we can do is get prepared. We see, I'm looking at the Weather Channel, and I'm looking at the jet stream, which is becoming so undulated and convoluted. That tells me that Earth is really in serious trouble in terms of meteorological severe weather events. And that jet stream seems to be getting so crazy and so unnatural in its contortions. Normally, 30 years ago, the jet stream was rather smooth and horizontal, because the jet stream is that flow of air from west to east that goes across the northern hemisphere of the planet Earth. And it used to be rather horizontal and smooth, and that's why you could expect moderate temperatures without very extreme excursions in temperature and in weather. All those years, you remember when you were younger, as a child, we never had such severe weather as we have now. Now, severe weather is the norm.
No, it's gotten so bad, John, that even the weather forecasters can't forecast the weather.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, just today, a couple of days ago, on the Weather Channel, as an example, one example out of thousands, they stated that NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, announced that the year 2015 or 2014, I'm not sure, was the hottest year on record ever, since they've been keeping records, which goes back to the 1800s. And we're seeing all kinds of records broken. I mean, I won't even go into the details because I'd be here all night telling you about the nations that have been flooded out: Australia, Pakistan, the state of Texas was, this is really weird, this is really wild. The state of Texas had been in the worst drought in its history last year, as you recall. I mean, it was so dry, the ground was cracking, houses were sinking in because the ground was losing its firmness due to dryness. A record drought. All of a sudden, there occurred record rainfall, to the point where, in a very short time, that drought-stricken state began to almost float away with floods, day after day of constant rain. Now we're getting the same thing in Florida. And, well, anyway, I want to get back to your question. I don't want to digress too much, but the evidence is so clear that things are happening, and what we have to do is prepare for it. Simply store food, store all the things that we're going to be needing. It doesn't take much to go to the grocery store and get canned white meat chicken and canned, I used to buy canned seafood, but I don't anymore because of the Fukushima disaster with all the radioactive waste that has been dumped in the oceans. But you can still buy Vienna sausages, for example, which are relatively cheap, and canned white meat chicken, and it's protein for survival. Store water, because water is the most important substance that we will need. And I've been saving empty bottles, plastic bottles, for years, and filling them with water. I still have many in my basement that I have neglected to fill yet, so I've got to get that finished. But I still have a lot of bottles of water stacked up in my basement. These are things that we have to do. Well, I don't know where to go from here except to tell people, before we go into, rather than scare people, I want to give people the consolation, the assurance that the God who loves them, who created them, is watching over it, all of us. And all we need to do is be aware of his invisible presence. This is the faith that you've often heard about, faith in God. They never tell you what constitutes faith in God, but faith is simply contemplating the invisible but real and tangible presence, contemplating the real presence of our Creator, who keeps our hearts beating every minute, every second. So that's what we need to do, is simply walk through life feeling the presence of God. It's not easy because we get distracted, and I do all the time. I get distracted, but you just do that and prepare yourself by acquiring the physical things that you need and caring for others, and be resolve in your heart that you will help others, those who don't have the sense to prepare, that you're going to help them in any way you can when these tribulations occur.
Right. And John, if you could, I don't know if you have a volume or anything on your end, if you could just speak a little louder into the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. No, that's okay.
I thought, okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll do that. And let's see now. I don't know where to begin. There's so many different directions. I was just reading. Is this a little bit better?
It's a lot better, but
Oh,
I wanted to ask you about these holistic doctors who are getting knocked off now. It was
oh,
scientists and now it's doctors.
that is so ghastly and appalling to hear about these doctors who are getting murdered. This has been on my mind. I practically couldn't sleep last night, just worrying about all these doctors who are being killed. Uh, I've been putting out reports, as you know, giving people plans,
Yeah.
formulating plans that people can follow to help to deter these monsters who run, own, and operate the big pharmaceutical corporations who are, I believe, and I think it's becoming obvious that they are the ones behind these murders. This indicates to me that they are desperate. When they start murdering doctors, this tells me that they're desperate. They know that their vaccine house of cards is collapsing. They're monitoring the public, and they're seeing now a what you might call in a nuclear reaction. What do they call that in a nuclear reaction? Critical mass occurs.
Yeah.
One neutron hits another neutron, and that neutron hits two more, and those two hit four more neutrons, and it reaches a point where the number of neutrons that have been set in motion becomes exponentially great, whereby the entire population of neutrons in the nuclear bomb, for example, become activated and the entire bomb explodes. Well, we've reached critical mass in our society with with the evidence of the injurious nature of vaccines, and the fact that not only is it injurious, but it is deliberately injurious to the people. It is designed to harm the minds of children, and is designed to harm the minds of people and harm their bodies. We see the evidence of it all around us in all the various the autism, the Tourette syndrome, the obsessive compulsive disorder. These are epidemic in our society today. So they're getting desperate, and that is a part, I believe, of the entire spectrum of wild and violent and vicious behavior of our New World Order ruling elite. They're desperate. They're going underground. They know now that they have
Oh, did we lose you? Yeah, we did. We lost John. Let's bring him back. I don't know what happened, folks. Let's try to bring him back. The show's only as good as its lines, right?
The person you have called at 9.
All right. Well, he's having a few issues, it looks like. I got so many questions for him, too. He really does his research, John does, and some may call him a conspiracy theorist, but I guess we all are, right? Any of us who look at anything, especially the things we can prove, and we're still conspiracy theorists. And we told people about their phone calls being listened into and their emails and all that, and it took a mainstream guy to come out before anyone believed it. But before that, it was a conspiracy theory.
Hello.
There you are, John. Welcome back. We lost you. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, where did you lose me at? What was I saying? I want to pick up.
Well, we were talking about the doctors and the preparing, and to be honest, I'm not sure the last thing it cut out.
Well, I was saying they're desperate. Did you hear me say
yes,
that the power elite, the ruling oligarchy of big pharmaceutical corporations and the medical industry, the medical mafia,
that's where you left off, John, and now that makes sense why we disconnected. But go ahead.
Right, the pharmaceutical mafia and the cancer industry. It's an industry. They're all desperate, and they're so desperate and so bold and brazen that they know they're beyond accountability now. There's no one who has the power to stop them. And that's why they're murdering these doctors, because they want to force vaccinate everyone. This is what we have to realize, that with the murder, the serial murders of all these anti-vaccine doctors who are proving the harmfulness of vaccines, with these serial murderers and the boldness of these murderers, we can expect to be forced vaccinated soon. And that's what we have to alert the people about. Again, don't let them scare you. I know it's easy for people to get scared with all these horrible attacks that are coming upon the people. Hello?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I keep on. Now I've got this phobia about being disconnected.
You never can tell.
Right. So just call me back. That's all.
Okay.
But don't be afraid, because remember, we are dealing with a spiritual entities. Believe it or not, I know. I come from a science background. I'm a former high school physics teacher. I spent most of my career as an electronics engineer, and I was an atheist for a good part of my life, and that's why I bring this up, my background. That's for the only reason why, is to let you know that despite of my scientific nature and attitudes, God has somehow gotten my attention and come into my life. His Spirit has motivated me and changed me and made me realize that God and the presence of God as our Creator is the most highest degree of scientific knowledge that anyone can have. Because you look at this body, and I'm working up to a point. I'm building to a point that will assure you and your listeners to be bold and to be fearless. Okay. And that is, God created us. When you look at the marvel of the human body, it's just I never was aware of it until God's Spirit came into me. But it's just so marvelous. I could not get into all the aspects of it, of the wonder of the human body. When you realize that two things. One, there must be a great, fabulous, powerful, loving Creator who created us to give us a body like this. I mean, I often thought, if we had evolved, why didn't we evolve with legs that had no joints, or arms that had no joints? I mean, then you couldn't move. We would be virtually immobile if we had no knee joints and elbow joints. But God gave us a body with limbs that move back and forth, even ankles and toes and hands and fingers. And look at a football player or a baseball player. Look at all the marvelous physical movements that those athletes can make, or a tennis player, with the body that God gave them. So you know that someone very powerful created our bodies, and you also know that this powerful being, God, also loves us very much. Even though he is not able at this time to show his face to us, he shows himself in so many different ways, with the beauty of the human body, the beauty of the human emotions, love, and the beauty of the human mind. He shows him his presence and his creator, his creative truth to all of us in that way, although he's not able to show his face. But he expects, with all that evidence, that we will logically realize that he's there. And I've been doing that every day, and now I have no fear. They may try to kill me. They may try to kill any one of us for bringing this information out. And eventually it will happen, because the prophets of the Scriptures tell us that those who believe in God, who will save us, God, our Savior, those who believe will be persecuted and actually executed. But I'm ready for it. As long as I keep my mind, my awareness that God promises that if they kill my body, that I will receive a brand new, indestructible body. It will be just like this body, but it will be indestructible. It will be ageless. And
hey, I'm all for that.
I mean, this is really. I mean, I know it sounds fantastic, but if you look at how fantastic the human body is right now, and how fantastic this world is, and the trees and the flowers and the sun, and how our planet is just the right distance away from the sun, so that we have moderate temperatures and we're livable, survivable for human beings, and all the animals and the various amazing different species that God created, the fish and the birds and the mammals. It's just wonderful, and it gives us abundant evidence that indeed if we're given this world by God, then certainly we will be given a new life where there's no more evil, and where He says, "I will wipe away every tear." And you can trust God to protect you from these geological disasters. He promises us that in the scriptures too. I'm more afraid, I mean, we should be more afraid of the geological disasters, the earthquakes, than we are of the thugs whom they sent out to bully us and persecute us.
Well, yeah, John, you're so right. I just wanted to give my 2 cents in this, and that is that I fear Mother Nature more than I'll ever fear the thugs in Washington or wherever else they are. I'm not afraid to die because I've knocked on death's door, and I know there's another side, and so I'm not afraid. I don't want to die, but when it happens, it's not the end. So I have no fear of that. And once you have fear of dying, you've now given up all your power.
That's so true, really. And even the for example, during the Falklands War, down the islands that Britain controlled off the coast of Argentina a number of years ago, the British were defending it. Of course, the British were wrong to take that island, which belonged to Argentina. But the point is, the British were besieged by Argentine troops, and they knew they were going to die in their fort. But they just, once they had accepted the fact that, hey, I'm going to die, there's no way to avoid it, they just fought like hell, and fought like, with great power and tenacity and ferocity. So that's what happens when you know that you're going to die, but you're going to be given a new life with an indestructible, ageless body in a world where there's no more evil, and there's joy. And anyway, that's what I wanted to bring to the awareness of people, and keep that in their minds, because I cannot live with fear. I mean, I've been fearful of this global diabolical Satan worshipping cabal that rules the world, but I won't do it anymore, because I know that it's self-destructive. Well, anyway.
And if I may, we're in a time now where they want schools to teach our kids about oral sex and different things like that, where they want to give children vaccines without notifying the parents first, or even getting the parents' permission. I mean, we've come to a time where I don't know if people have noticed, but this is a police state that we are in. And maybe it hasn't come to your door yet, because maybe you mind your P's and Q's and you just don't get out a lot. But, if you do make noise in the right places, you'll find out just how fast it becomes a police state around you. And it's people better take it serious. That's all I could say. Planet X, that's honestly, not to diminish it in any way, but that's like the least on my worry list. I think I worry more about what these psychopaths on this planet already are going to do, say, if they find out about something like a Planet X, in which the government apparently would know about this, right? So, it's hard to argue all these underground bunkers, all these preparations they've taken, the seed banks they've got. What is there? 3 of them, I think, around the world, maybe more. And I mean, all these things that they've done. I mean, what are they doing them for? It's, and then you hear about Planet X and people go, oh, that's nonsense. Okay, well, can you give me a better one? I mean, are they going to nuke the planet and then clean it up later? Or, I mean, these people are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is obvious that they're going underground. So why would they be going underground? Well, they're for two reasons. One would be that they're planning to start a nuclear war, and that in itself makes you should alert the public. The fact that these people are getting ready to go underground, and the Queen of England, I've just got a report, but we have to check it out. We don't know if it's true yet. The Queen of England may not be alive right now.
Really?
That's a report I got from somebody, but let's check it out. You see, I have a photograph, a very clear, large magazine photograph sent to me by Newswatch magazine when Pastor David J. Smith was still alive. He just passed away. But he put out a wonderful Newswatch magazine, and I still have the photo downstairs, a large glossy picture, close-up view of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth. But I knew immediately when I looked at their faces, those were not the real Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Those were their doubles. That was obvious to me. And anybody who does photographic analysis, like the guy Massimo Mazzucco, who does photograph analysis, and he proved that absolutely, photographically, that the moon landing was a hoax. Just by photographic analysis, he would probably be able to easily detect that.
Now, John, let me bring this up real quick. You made you hit a spot, I should say, with the moon thing. I've had an astronaut on who made a really good point, and he said, if we didn't really go to the moon, he says, then why wouldn't the Russians, blurt it out and bust us? And so that was kind of a good point that he made. So unless they're in on it,
we don't know what happened behind the scenes. For example, the U.S. government may have threatened Russia with some kind of blackmail. I mean, the Russian leaders. The U.S. government, I'm certain, I mean, I don't have to have studied it, all this esoteric secret information that goes on within the intelligence agencies. I don't have to have studied it or known it to realize logically that they would have all kinds of blackmail evidence on Russian rulers, Russian leaders, so that if they ever release this information, the U.S. intelligence agencies would turn around and release incriminating evidence on the Russian leaders and their government too, which would hurt them. And plus deals too, where they bribe them. They use various means to silence people, and one of the means is blackmail threats of death. I'm sure they have death threats against Russian leaders, threats of in ruining their careers, like they did with President Nixon. They drove him out of office with blackmail, all kinds of false information. I mean, the U.S. could do so many things. They could sabotage their oil depots. They could do so many things to retaliate against the Russians if the Russians ever exposed the moon hoax.
See, and I've always thought, John, that we went to the moon, but the footage that we were shown was not the actual footage, and that's how I always felt about it. 'Cause it kind of made sense that we've never tried to go back again, but then I don't know. Can't we look on a strong telescope and see their crafts or any of that stuff up there?
Probably, yeah. We have the. I'm sure we do have the technology and the equipment to do that, but they won't do it. It's the government who controls all that, and that's the criminals that we're trying to detect that are not going to allow themselves to be exposed. But anyway, getting back to the subject of Planet X, I know it's such a diverse subject, and if I go too long in any one direction, I can get lost and find myself in a different forest. I don't want to do that. So,
okay.
I was reading.
Oh no, go right ahead. Go.
Last night I picked up this book that I had for a long time, Edgar Cayce on Atlantis.
Ooh.
Imagine this. Now, Atlantis, according to my best studies, Atlantis existed and was destroyed probably around 9,000 BC. I mean, that's such a long time ago that nobody really knows. You'll see a lot of reports on the internet saying that the sinking of Atlantis occurred 4,000 BC and all that, but nobody really knows. However, there are some people who've done some pretty good research, and from what I found, the best research indicates that it was around 9,000 BC, which lines up chronologically with multiple orbital incursions of Planet X, the brown dwarf star, whose gravitational and magnetic fields pull on planet Earth and disrupt the surface of Earth, giving Earth a new facelift, massaging the underlying viscous mantle of Earth, the mantle beneath Earth's crustal surface, and thus causing the crust itself to break up like a pie crust. Think of an apple pie with the crust being analogous to Earth's crust and the apple mixture beneath the crust being analogous to Earth's viscous molten magma. And when that molten magma gets gravitationally massaged from a distance of, say, several million miles by a massive intruding brown dwarf star on its way to its rendezvous with its gravitational paramour, the sun, on its passage past Earth on its way to the sun, it gets close enough, like several million miles away from Earth, such that its gravitational and magnetic fields actually massage the mantle, the pie beneath the pie crust, and the pie crust itself. So when you wave that pie crust, it's kind of brittle, have caused waving beneath it. Because of its brittleness, the pie crust will shoot up, jut upward, and you'll have, it's like taking the pie, if you can visualize this, and taking one side of the pie with one hand and the other side of the pie with the palm of the other hand, and bringing your two palms closer together, you'd be compressing the pie crust laterally and causing it to thrust upward. That's how we get mountain building. That's how mountain building occurred thousands of years ago on past intrusions of Planet X, the brown dwarf star.
And you know, John, we've been getting a lot of warnings. I even seen Fox News here talk about it's inevitable that there's going to be a big one. A big earthquake coming, and that this was a few days ago.
What was the essence of the report? A big earthquake, did they say? Or
they said that seismologists are saying that they're expecting a big earthquake above 9 to hit here.
Above 9.
Yeah, go look up. Just maybe type in Fox earthquake to come or something like that, and I'm sure it'll be on there. I don't normally watch the what I call the fake news, but occasionally I'll catch 10 minutes of it to see what they're talking about, and I just happened to turn it on in the afternoon, and that's what was blaring. And the guy said, they had experts coming on talking about, they're seeing a lot of stress, and that there's going to be a huge earthquake. So.
Wow, I'm glad you told me that. This is really big news. We have to check it out and warn people, because when the mainstream media, which is so secretive and deceitful, begins to warn us of these disasters, that disasters are virtually imminent. Are virtually bound to occur. They won't tell you. In fact, I'm surprised they even told us that. But I guess there are still people with a conscience who are in these news organizations, because let's face it, they and their children will be killed in these quakes too. So, they want to try to help others and help themselves by putting the information out. I would imagine if I were one of those news people for example, an editor or someone with power in the Fox News or some of the other networks, I would think that, well, we should warn people, even though they may be risking their jobs, their high-level positions, they should still warn people because they have some conscience left within them.
I have it right here, John, and what I'll do is, first chance I get, I'll send you the link, and it says, massive mega quake could destroy Pacific Northwest, report says.
Oh, I've heard about that report, but I didn't know Fox had put it out.
Yeah.
Yes, what we have is off the west coast of Washington State and Oregon is the infamous Cascadia subduction zone. And in that area you have what might be considered, if something, the seafloor off the coast of Oregon and Washington State is cracked, and one cracked portion is buckled and underlying the separation or the joint of the adjacent side of the seafloor. So where that huge crack is, the two pieces of the crack are not vertically even with one another. One is at a lower depth than the other, and it's actually buckled and forced beneath the other one, which is on top of it. So it's like, with the pressures that are occurring and within the mantle of the Earth, and the lateral pressures that are causing those two plates to come together, there is an increasing force, upward force on the underlying side of that fault, that crack in the seafloor. And as a result, that force is building, and it's going to build to a point where it snaps. The lower underlying side of the fault will snap upward, and as a result, you'll have a massive tsunami. It has to happen because what would occur would be the large, vast quantities of oceanic water would be thrust upward very abruptly in an undersea earthquake of that nature. And it would be a snapping event rather than, it would be even more violent than the earthquake that occurred, the undersea earthquake that occurred in Christmas of 2004 in the Indian Ocean, which wiped out 250,000 people. You remember that Asian tsunami of 2004. That was simply a step change in the two faults. Not a buckling, not a snapping action. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think when Fox reported this, they said something along the lines of 30 to 40 million people will wind up being killed by this one because of the coastal cities and such. And there'd be a tsunami that would happen that'd be so big, I mean, it would come hundreds of miles, inland. That's pretty severe.
Hundreds of miles. Wow, that's just so appalling. I can understand how that would happen because, the Asian tsunami, the Indian Ocean tsunami that occurred in 2004 was a step change type of earthquake where you had a fault, where there was a crack, a separation in the ocean floor, and one of the sides of the plates, the tectonic plates that was at that juncture of the seafloor, that plate rose upward as a result of the earthquake, and it just pushed upward rather abruptly, and it forced all masses of oceanic water upward and caused a tsunami wave to be propagated toward the coast of Thailand and Indonesia, etc. Well, with this Cascadia subduction zone, where you have one plate buckled and forced beneath the adjacent plate, with the increasing pressure, more force is being built up and stored like a spring. If you were to pull a spring, a metal spring and keep on stretching it, you would be building up a lot of potential energy in that spring. And if you were to release it, that spring could be a devastating weapon.
And John,
it's released.
If this was to happen, which, it's not a matter of, I guess, if, it's when, then could it be so strong that it caused, I don't know, continental drifting?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say how severe it would be, but I think some of the repercussions geologically would be amazing, astounding. We have with California, I keep on hearing reports that the great San Andreas Fault earthquake is about ready to occur, and we're way overdue on that for that event. And what you have in the San Andreas Fault is the outer edge of California is called the Pacific Plate. That's a tectonic plate that meets the juncture of the North American plate. So on the edge of the Pacific Plate, which is mostly the Pacific Ocean, but it catches the very westernmost portion of California. That's the Pacific Plate, and then the crack is somewhere inland, not too far from the coast of California. And the other side of that crack or fault is called the North American Plate. And what they're shifting, the Pacific Plate is moving in a northwesterly direction, but the plate is finding it difficult to move because it's butted up against the North American Plate, and the frictional retention force is preventing the movement. So again, you have something like what I just described as this pulling of a spring and the gradual slow stretching of a spring. With each inch of stretch in that spring, you are increasing the amount of potential energy, the stored energy that can later be released in the form of kinetic energy when the spring is released. Similarly, when that frictional force is overcome by the Pacific Plate riding northwesterly, and all of a sudden the frictional force is abruptly overcome, and you have a snapping action. And that's going to be a very traumatic earthquake. Same thing with the snapping action of that subducted plate beneath, off the coast of Oregon in this Cascadia subduction zone. So, anyway, without getting into a lot of technical detail, it's going to be very bad. I mean, I'm not being alarmist when I say it's going to happen, because all the scientists are saying, in fact, they're saying it's going to happen. You've heard this statement from the scientists and from the scientists who are portrayed publicly, who are the designated mouthpieces of the deceitful power elite who control the television networks, the scientists who were allowed to speak, and the newspaper reporters who were allowed to present their statements, are saying it's not if, but when. You've heard that so many times, right? It's not a question of if, but a question of when. So it's going to happen, but look, just get prepared physically. Know that God is with you. God loves you. Today I began to, I overcame any beginning fear of being harmed or threatened by these devils who rule the world, because I had issued to many people the idea that doctors ought to alert other doctors as to the serial murders of doctors that are now occurring. They should alert other doctors and take steps to unite as the medical profession to deter further murders by these, what we know as to be the pharma mafia and the cancer industry.
And John, I was going to say, which ones are they going after? I mean, are they going after the top profile ones, or are they going? Because there's a lot of
the ones with the most effective therapies that are really working and who are becoming famous. Those are the ones whom they're going after. Dr. Teresa Sievers, a beautiful young Florida physician, was murdered brutally, from what I understand. See, they don't do it. They don't do it in a subtle way by giving them a heart attack. Well, some of them were given the heart attack with the heart attack gun, which I had posted a video of one of the developers of the heart attack gun from many decades ago, when Senator Frank Church of Idaho was investigating, one of the most courageous men, and I wonder whatever they did to him to harm him. But Senator Frank Church of Idaho was investigating CIA's evil practices, and in front of the Congress they showed the heart attack gun, and this woman was one of the scientists who devised the poison that went into the heart attack gun. And the congressman, Senator Barry Goldwater, in this old film, was in the Congress there alongside Senator Frank Church, and they were examining this heart attack gun on this YouTube video. So they some of them do use that, but many of them are blatant murders, like the brutal, vicious beating death of Dr. Teresa Sievers and the brutal shooting death of Dr. Jeffrey Bradstreet. They shot him twice in the chest and then threw his body into a river. I was putting out information and telling doctors to unite. I started to think, well, they may come after me, even though I'm a nobody. If my plan starts to take hold, they may come after me. Although, I've already released the information. What could they do? They can't. Even if they silence me, the information has gone out. The plan has been distributed to many people already. What could they do except take vengeance upon me? Am I speaking loud enough?
All right. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Am I speaking loud enough, Michael? I'm not sure. I can't tell if I'm yelling or...
Oh, no, you're doing just fine, John. It's just I was just getting a report on Dr. Rand, and apparently he's been sitting waiting for us to call. Now, we've been trying to call, and we keep getting a busy signal. So what I'm going to do...
Oh, you know why? Because he has a cell phone. I think I have his number somewhere. I can't find it, but I have his cell phone number somewhere. And maybe that's not the number. You're not calling his cell phone.
Well, he just given me the number again to call him, and it's exactly what I've had and have been calling. So what I'll do, we've got a break coming up here, John. So why don't I take the break? I'm going to put you on hold, and when we come back from the break, I'll go ahead and try to get Dr. Rand on again. Why isn't it? You know what? I'm not even going to play that game. All right, let's go ahead and get John on, and then I'll add. Hello, John. Apparently lost you again. I apologize for that.
Oh, no problem.
All right. So we're going to add Dr. Rand into this call now. We're going to attempt to anyway. So let's go. Why is it not letting me do it? I don't know what it is. It don't like his phone number. So, Ira, if you want to call in to make sure that the lines are working, I'd appreciate that big time. So... John, all right, so let's continue. And we were talking about the deaths of the doctors, the scientists, and I think that's where we left off.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned scientists. So we have all these doctors being killed, and I mean, I've been receiving lots of emails from all the people in broadcasters who know about these deaths, but everybody seems to be too afraid to talk about it. It's kind of, unearthing to know that all these deaths are occurring, and all the high visibility broadcasters are rather silent about it.
Yeah.
Michael?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I keep on worried that thinking that maybe we got cut off.
Well, no, Ira just tuned in here for a moment on the phones, and it's working fine. So the call-in is just fine. Everything seems to be working, but for some reason we can't get to Dr. Rand. So he's probably going to have to call in if we're going to have him. So,
yeah, he might try to mention, if he's listening, to try calling in from his cell phone.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll work. I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway... So everybody's silent about it, and I think that these people have a large audience. I don't have much of an audience, but yet they're not talking. So somebody has to start offering solutions to the problem, not just reporting on it. We've got to find solutions, and the solutions I've presented some in some carefully crafted compositions that I've been distributing to large numbers of email recipients. And I hopefully people will catch on and start to implement these suggestions for thwarting the power elite's serial murders of doctors.
And so
That's
now, with all this going on, John, with doctors getting knocked off and scientists and probably those who are watching the skies as well, probably getting knocked off as well, what would that tell us? I mean, how do we know whereabouts this object is and when it might get here? Because people are asking the question about this September 23rd date, that there's something big supposed to happen then, and I'm wondering if it has anything to do with this object.
Well, I think I'm going to start doing some more studying on YouTube and following some of the Planet X researchers, the astronomers, the amateur astronomers. But I believe that right now there is a growing threat, or not only, I believe, based upon good information, that there is a growing threat of asteroids coming close to Earth. And that's what they're concerned about. And they will not tell you. I mean, James McCann already mentioned that they're under contract not to tell you. The people who work for NASA and work for the government have signed a contract, a non-disclosure contract, whenever they're hired, that they will not say something unless it's been authorized by their bosses. And in fact, ABC News, I would say around 15 years ago, I have a report somewhere from ABC News stating that the U.S. government revealed that if there's an asteroid is coming close to Earth, their policy is remain silent, do not tell the public at all. Do not give them any hint of the threat. And that's their policy. So now we are in silence. We may be in danger, but our evil government is refusing to tell us. However, we should watch them and see if they're going underground. We know they're going underground. We see all the reports of it that I've been posting from the Daily Mail of London, England. They claim that now, the report states that
is this
Cheyenne Mountain, the great underground shelter for NORAD and the ruling elite, has now been expanding and opening up. Well, that's sort of a deception because it was never closed, but now it's really expanding. And it seems that they're taking on more and more people. I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I think we have Dr. Rand with us now. Dr. Rand, is this you?
It certainly is. Good evening, gentlemen, and hello.
Well, good evening to you. I don't know what it was. The powers that be did not want us to call you tonight. We've been trying, and it just kept coming up busy.
Is this John with you?
Yes. It is.
Hi, Jason.
John, you're my guiding star, dude.
Please,
your daily
fall.
Your daily updates and reports are the most accurate and truthful. I get a lot of stuff, obviously, as does you and Michael. Right now, I'm totally happy, John, with your Tuesday, July 14th, 2015 posting at 4:16. The subject was reporters, Earth cataclysms threaten your families. That it's perfectly timed for what's going on right now.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jason. I think I should repost that because...
I think you should. I think you should. Once I read it, I realized everything... Okay. All three of us are basically involved in looking into alternative paranormal realities and things of spirit and heart and all that other stuff that makes up Michael's world for his radio show. But the odd thing here is that John has got his finger dead center on also the religious aspects of this, which are there, I believe. There are the spiritual parts of this. There are the metaphysical parts of this that go beyond normal science and understanding. And then we have the biblical thread line, which John and I believe that John's right on that one. And And then I came upon your posting about, right under that posting, John, you go on about all the way back to Pope Pius XII, knowing what that third and final prophecy was of Fatima. You covered that beautifully.
Thank you.
Your writing makes me think that what I wrote in our book, The Return to Planet X, we covered this subject, and I'm glad to say that I didn't find anything in here that I found that I made a mistake in.
Well, that
you were right on the story, and you took it beyond that, John. You took it beyond that to a deeper understanding of how that original event. What was it? 1914, the first one.
1917, yes. The
17.
Fatima.
Right, and then you brought it back into the present, and then we leapfrogged into the absolute moment in your story. So, whoever would like to keep their communications up with John should tune into you at your optonline.net address, correct?
Yes, the email address is J.
Are you open to new fans?
Oh, yes. I mean, and hopefully all those new fans will alert others, because that's our whole purpose. The three of us is to alert others to things they must know.
And this love fest will not end with this statement, but I needed to say those things because I honestly feel that there are possibly no more, no less than about 6 of us who I consider still to be untouched by the government or persuaded by some force. I've had a lot of nudging and pushing and strange things happening, but nothing catastrophic yet. Okay, guys? Mm-hmm. I know they're listening. I can promise you, Michael, my friend, and John, my friend, I promise you that tonight you're probably being recorded.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Okay, so what we say, by the way, we should say, gentlemen, we're unrehearsed here. We have not spoken to one another. We've not pre-programmed this program. Am I correct, guys?
That's correct. Right. We couldn't even get a hold of you, Dr. Rand. So
now, what was that? Okay, John, what was that all about?
The inability to get a hold of you?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. I was looking frantically for your phone numbers. I have all these scraps of paper disorganized, and I just couldn't find your number. But I was going to give Michael your cell phone number. However, everything worked out good. So
it worked out. And by the way, our dear host, you have a wonderful assistant.
Thank you. Yes, Autumn.
Autumn works her best efforts at it. Okay.
She does.
So salute to Autumn. All right, John, I got a question for you. How deeply into this whole business of the uptick in the daily, hourly earthquake stats coming out of USGS? How concerned are you? Or let me put it this way: am I becoming overly concerned because the chain of the ring of fire chain of volcanoes and eruptions are beginning to dovetail on the map? Am I over alarmed here, or do we have something to think about?
Well, I trust your knowledge and your ability to study these earthquakes, Jason, and you've done more studying than I have recently. I've been neglecting the earthquake situation in favor of other issues. So whatever you've studied, I believe.
I'd like us maybe to do a 1 or 2 page paper between us, and have you posted on your website. I've been tracking these earthquakes now for about 5 years, and I have those large, wide folding envelopes. You can put like 3 inches of paper in there. You can put like a whole ream of paper down into one.
Yes. I've
got 2 or 3 of those. Wow. Full of earthquakes every day, every other day, sometimes 3 a week. And I did a whole thing in our book, The Return to Planet X, about how this whole earthquake thing works, and I went into earthquakes. So let me give you a real quick report, guys, a real quick update, okay? let's go back to Monday, July 27th. That's of this week, right? On the 27th of July, there was a 6.7 preliminary earthquake report for the Fox Islands in the Aleutian Islands chain in Alaska. In other words, that's the archipelago of islands that heads off toward Russia. Within minutes, let's say less than 14 minutes, there was a secondary quake right over the first quake. This time it was a 6.9. First one was a 6.7. This one was a 6.9. Interesting dynamic. The first earthquake occurred at 25 kilometers. The second following earthquake was at a depth of 11 kilometers. So what does that suggest, gentlemen?
You're the expert. You tell me.
Well, I'm hoping I'm right in my calculations and judgments, but if you have a deeper quake of 6.7 followed within minutes by a secondary quake, 2 full Richter scale points over the first one, and about half the distance closer to the surface, I would think that first earthquake, the 6.7, set up the 6.9, and now I think that entire region needs to go on some kind of a watch, because I think what's happening is the entire chain of volcanic mounts, along with their deep ocean vents, coupled to the fracture zone running down the entire planet from the top in the North Pole down to the South Pole. And when you superimpose all of these 3D images, you suddenly realize that you have a chain of volcanoes and earthquake zones that stretch all the way from Upper Siberia, Manchuria, then out into the ocean, down through the Pacific, right through the Japanese islands, which means Japan, I believe and I worry, is in serious, serious trouble. If you go back 2, 3, 4 years now, the earthquakes that are building up around Japan, all around it, it's a string of islands, it's not just one island. The earthquake patterns suggest that the Japanese islands sit on the top of a large mountain of some sort that is now getting ready to possibly collapse under its own weight, especially if Japan has 4 or 5 very big volcanoes. The most famous, of course, is Mount Fuji, which is unbelievably beautiful if you've ever seen it. If these suddenly come awake, it throws the whole island off balance, and that little Fukushima deal, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I really, really worry about Japan. Now, going back to the Ring of Fire chain of islands, on 18 July, now we're going to jump backwards in time. On 18 July, a 7.5. By the way, what we've been talking about, guys, are all volcanic and accompanied by volcanic eruptions, but they're all now above the 6.0 thresh mark. So we're talking about 6.0 and above. Some of these go all the way to 8s. It was on the Santa Cruz Islands, and the Santa Cruz Islands are way out in the Pacific off of the continent of Australia, okay? The scary part was it was only 10 kilometers from the surface of the ocean. You see where I'm trying to go here. I think the skin of the planet is beginning to loosen and fracture. This is just like a Jules Verne movie. This would be another great Jules Verne movie.
Well,
unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we'd be the quote-unquote actors in this film, and, we don't have stunt doubles.
Right. So let's jump backward in time again to 16 July, a couple of days earlier. There was a 6.4 earthquake. These are major earthquakes in the Barbados region of the Windward Islands. Those are the islands almost due north of the South American continent. They're not too far offshore, but there is volcanic activity throughout that entire region because that starts the curvature inward and then out through Central America back up to the west coast. That's how this whole chain of volcanic eruptions are already starting to take place and will greatly expand. By the way, we're just talking about the earthquakes tonight. The volcanic activity is unbelievable, and it's getting bigger and bolder, more and more major volcanoes.
And it's all related, right?
Absolutely, guys. See, John, I don't know where you are on this whole Al Gore global warming debate. Here's my take on it. And guys, I'm sorry, I seem to be doing all the talking, and that's not what I wanted tonight.
No, that's fine. You have. I've talked so much already.
Yeah, go ahead.
But John, and guys, consider this. Let's just play the game. Let's just assume that there's no such thing as either global warming or global cooling. Let's just assume that it should be normal. However, if we understand that whatever touches, affects, nudges, frustrates, threatens the integrity of our sun, any object approaching or leaving its presence, creates a disturbance inside the heart and the soul of the sun, and whatever affects the sun is directly in direct response to what the sun is trying to readjust to, that we get its outward bound pulses, these power flares, the surges. If we have to go back a few years and talk about how late the sun cycle is over the past 7-8 years. The whole cycle of the sun, the normal cycle, as John and will probably can help me with here, the sun is, I think, 11-year cycle.
Yes.
And about the 9th year of its cycle that was forthcoming, John, what was the date that it was supposed to have been here? It was
supposed to be 2011.
2011. Yep,
right.
That's it. Yep. Well, not only did we miss it, the sun has been off its normal cycle now for almost 3 years. Haven't we noticed the sudden weird escalation of the types of tornadoes and the types of storms and the wildfires? All of this has to do with Earth's inability to readjust to what the sun is throwing at us. It's knocked off the normal range of the that upper polar landmass that pushes down and creates the fronts back and forth. The what's that called, John?
The jet stream?
The jet stream. Thank you, Bud. Yeah, the jet stream has been so far downward, southward off its course that it doesn't even look like the same objective thing when you look at it on a weather map. It's all distorted, and it
right.
whips like a snake.
Exactly.
You got to understand what we're looking at when you see that thing.
That's what
it's
I was
actually
mentioning
whipping
to
like
Michael.
a snake. What's that?
I was mentioning that exactly what you're saying to Michael earlier, stating that 30 years ago, back in the 1980s, for example, you had a relatively horizontal jet stream. It sort of described a pattern that you would see with the northern boundary of the United States where the U.S. meets Canada, the U.S.-Canadian borderline. That's the sort of shape that the jet stream typically has when you have fair, moderate temperatures and no great excursions. But when you get a jet stream that begins to undulate up and down like a roller coaster, it used to be like a regular horizontal highway, a smooth highway. But now it's like a roller coaster, and when you have as you know, the leading edge of that roller coaster that swings down. The jet stream brings cold air masses down from Canada, swoops them down toward Mexico, and then it thrusts upward again.
And it picks up all that moisture.
Yes, it sucks like a vacuum. It sucks
Yes.
up warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico,
Yep.
brings it up to that boundary line, that clashing boundary line between the cold air on the one side that's brought down in a large sweep, and also the warm air, warm, moist air that meets that boundary, and then you have a clash, a violent clash, which generates a huge, rapid upthrust of air at the boundary, which pulls moist air rapidly to very high altitudes, freezes the moisture into large hailstones. And that's where you get these massive, abnormal hailstorms and all kinds of tornadoes. It creates spin in the atmosphere, puts a spin on it like you would put a spin on a bowler's ball. And that's how you get tornadoes generated. But why are we getting these excursions in a jet stream? Well, I had written about it for several years, and I continue to develop this one particular composition that I've been emailing out, and I'll make it real quick because I want to get back to Jason and his information. But what's happening is the Earth, this is my theory, and I see more and more evidence to show validity for this theory. That is, within the center of the Earth is a solid, you'll find scientists talking about this, geophysicists, there's a solid metal ball at the center of the Earth, and surrounding this solid metal ball is a cavity filled with molten metal. So it's sort of like a ball floating around. If you took a potter's wheel and put a bowl of water on top of the potter's wheel, now that bowl of water begins to spin just as the Earth spins, rotates daily. And in the center of that bowl on top of the potter's wheel, suppose you put a ping pong ball. That ball will stay in the center, and it will rotate right around the center, but it will not revolve because it's at the center. As you can visualize that, rotation but not revolution. However, if someone were to blow violently and persistently on that, horizontally on that ping pong ball that's on the spinning potter's wheel, the ping pong ball could be forced off center. And now it is not only rotating, but it is also revolving. And when it revolves, what will it do? What will that ping pong ball do to the stability of the water that was swirling around in the bowl, in the revolving bowl or the rotating bowl? That water will become turbulent. Whereas before it was smooth, now it becomes turbulent because the ball is revolving, acting like a stirrer, causing waviness in that swirling water. Well, the same thing happens within the Earth's core, the molten core. The solid metal ball is now revolving farther and farther off center. And as it does so, it creates these waves in the molten core. Well, the electromagnetic generates electricity. It's a dynamo, exactly. Yeah. And now that dynamo of electricity, which I'm not going into the detail, but I could show you the congruence, the uniformity between the shape and flow of the Earth's molten inner core, molten outer core, the congruence and the uniformity of that flow with the Earth's jet stream. So the jet stream becomes a photographic moving depiction of the swirling motion of the Earth's molten core.
Like an X-ray.
So if the core becomes
like
wavy, the jet stream becomes wavy. If the core becomes roller coaster-like in its flow, in its metal flow, then the jet stream becomes roller coaster-like. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason, please.
No, I'm saying if you, practically speaking, as you've described it, it would be like looking at an X-ray of the electromagnetic waves, which are what these weather fronts are made of. And that's what's been, like you said, that's what's been disturbing everything. You see, the core produces our electromagnetic sciences that control much of the planet's functioning, and even our own human bodies.
Electromagnetic what, Jason?
Frequencies.
Right.
We're very complicated even as human beings. the way our brains operate, the way our bodies operate. There's a lot of little metaphysical mumbo-jumbo mysteries here.
And our planet kind of works the same way, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I say superimpose our tiny little mental being spirits, our singular, 2 hands, 2 feet, teeth, eyes, and ears, against the immensity and the power of nature within the planet, which dwarfs us in its size and power. People really don't understand, guys. Ladies and gentlemen out there, you really, really, really need to listen to what we're saying, not because we're preaching to you, but because we're part of this Earth-like save the world if we can program without being Greenpeace and all these other protest groups. We're just people. We're authors. We're lecturers. We're speakers. We're teachers. By the way, I believe that we're all students and that we're all teachers and we're all students.
That's
right. think I try to learn as much every day. I glean everything I can off of every commercial I see. I pick it apart. As Michael knows, I have a musical background.
Right.
I used to be a record producer. And I've got a bunch of gold and platinum records and lots of exciting experiences and lots of metaphysical experiences. I spent all the time that I was in Florida living this record producer's dream life, which it was. I was also lucky enough and so much gifted to work with Charles Berlitz and Dr. J. Manson Valentine, the co-authors of the book, The Bermuda Triangle. I'm sure you guys are aware of that book.
The story, not the book, but yes, the story.
Well, yeah.
Okay, the book is quite famous. It's 280 million copies in 91 languages. I guess that tells you that there was some success. Yeah. It's the story of them exploring the Bahamas, trying to figure out the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. And lo and behold, what do I get across my desk is, and I'm holding it in my hand, you see how things work, guys? I believe that I myself have a metaphysical bent to my personality. I don't see things normally like most people. I see brighter colors. I see more detail. I hear things. I have super critical hearing. I can hear thunder coming from miles away. I can hear a jet approaching. I'm thumbing through the internet. What's the date? On the 25th, and I see something that says 50 objects. It's one of those. It's called the Bored Lion series. They give you, the 50 best things about eating shrimp, or the 10 richest, 50 richest celebrities. Okay, here's the title on this one: 50 objects from the past, present, and future that will turn your world upside down. And then parens pics. So obviously you have to click until you get the pics. So I'm clicking away and I get to 32. Here's the title for the picture that shows up when you get to 32 in this 50 series. 16 ships stranded in the Bermuda Triangle. Now here's the catch. First of all, how do you strand 16 these are ships, 100, 200 footers, 300 footers, and smaller ships. They're all stuck on what looks like a sandbar, but you really can't tell.
Yeah.
But you can see that they've been there for years and years and years, possibly 25, 30 years. They were just discovered.
All in the same place, same location.
They've always been there, but they were just discovered recently.
Right,
now,
they all sank over the years in the same point.
Apparently, they did.
And what I've learned.
What would collect 16 different ships?
Magnets, a huge magnet.
Could be. There is another mystery to talk about.
Well, I understand, guys, that on the other side of the world, the exact other side, of the Bermuda Triangle, that same phenomena happens there too.
How about 12
really?
zones?
The other side of the Earth?
That's what I was told by one of my guests. Now I've never been able to confirm.
Well, I'm going to top you. Michael.
Okay.
There are 12 exact zones, all laid out according to that same mathematical theorem that the guy that talks about Mars. Oh, what's his name?
I know who you mean.
The face on Mars.
Oh,
Richard
Hoagland. Richard Hoagland. Right. He's postulated a theory and a theorem that I find very hard to dispute. And it appears to be something that occurs in a certain mathematical triangular fixed positioning based on an electromagnetic set of compass points. I hope I'm making sense. Did I lose anybody?
No.
Oh, no.
All right. And apparently, these are laid out on a grid system that completely surrounds the Earth. In other words, this part is like that part's like this part, and they all kind of match. And they all have these weird properties. There are these zones. But the Bermuda Triangle one is the one that always gets the most attention. Because, and now I'm going to dive into the story of how we discovered a pyramid, a very, very large pyramid, possibly the size of the Great Pyramid, that lies at the bottom of the river of water, the Gulf Stream, that flows northeast out from the Caribbean areas up along the coast, makes a complete circle. It's a complete circle.
It sank many centuries ago. It was a land pyramid, right?
Absolutely. It was the
I have a
outer post marker. It was the outer post marker for Atlantis. I'm going to weave a little story tonight if I can. We got some time. Fabulous story. The Bimini Islands, the North and South Bimini, that's where Hemingway spent many of his years. That's where he wrote The Old Man and the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
North and South Bimini represent the southwesternmost tip of what was once the archipelago of islands known as Atlantis. Atlantis was not a singular continent. It had large continental masses, but it was a contiguous string of islands, large islands that ranged all across from the southernmost tip of Africa. It spun its way out into the Atlantic and formed what was then known as the Backbone Ridge, the mid-ridge of the Atlantic Basin. And then at some point, around 12,500 years ago, there was a major Earth event. We believe that Planet X came through at that time again. To digress a second, in Exodus, Moses was in the process of leading a couple of million Jews out of exile. And we believe that Nibiru, what some people call Nibiru, I don't. I believe it was Planet X. That's another thing, John, we need to talk about, the difference between Nibiru and Planet X, but not at the moment.
Okay, I always thought they were one and the same.
No.
Okay.
And listen, I'm not scolding you because of what you said. What I'm saying to you is that is one of the most misconceived notions or ideas. Now, Nibiru could be in tow behind this rogue sun. See, I'm not poo-pooing it or discounting it, because I think Nibiru is probably truly the 12th planet, which means Sitchin had it right.
You're the second guest in 2 weeks on this show who's told me that. Sitchin, had it right.
Yeah, He got
I've got
it right.
his book right in front of me, right on the desk, The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin.
Right. It's about 89.6% right. There are a few things, and of course, who am I to say what's right and wrong with Sitchin? All I'm saying is, I've got about 4,300 personal volumes, both paperbacks and hardbacks of all kinds, shapes, and sizes on all of these subjects. I probably have every single book ever written about the Bermuda Triangle in my collection.
So you were saying now that the Earth went through a great upheaval about 10,000 BC or thereabouts.
Yes. And
that was what sunk that pyramid, among other structures.
Among other things. Now, don't forget, this occurred 10 to 12,500 years ago. Okay, when Atlantis sank because the mid-ridge collapsed, a gigantic volcanic event and earthquake event. It just split right down the center, and down it went. That's why there are very deep areas of the Atlantic. People think that the Atlantic is a shallower sea. Well, it's shallower than the Pacific for sure, but it has many deep cavities.
Yeah, there was a big documentary on that with very good graphics of the undersea, the seafloor, on the Science Channel or one of those channels that I saw. I should record that if they replay it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So when this event happened, I believe that there were sophisticated societies that inhabited this archipelago of islands. I think they were all very sophisticated. I think they some of them had spaceship or near spaceship technologies. I think that they were the true forerunner of man's intelligence. And then this event happened. And I think what happened is that some ET or ET extraterrestrial or UT ultra-terrestrial force came in and literally picked up whole cultures. For most part, a large portion of the Aztecs early on were taken. And what Cortez and the Spaniards killed and captured were not the best elite in every case.
Was there a war in the solar system?
Not that I'm aware of. Now, there are negative forces out there, just like there are negative forces here.
Well, I asked because I had a nuclear physicist on who said that there's traces on Mars of what you would expect to find if there was a nuclear war. And then you look at planet Earth, and there seems to be traces of something like that here as well, many moons ago. So I just wonder if... And then you got the asteroid belt, and I'm wondering, was there some kind of war, and did the Anunnaki bring it on, or...
No. Okay, now... Boy, you've touched on he's touched on a really delicate subject, and that is the Anunnaki. Were they good or bad? Were they the giants? Were they not? Who were they? What was their objectives? Did they screw us up or did they help us? I'm really not prepared to talk about the Anunnaki. Okay, if they are the true giants of old in Genesis, then I guess we have to give some relevance to the fact that they could exist. I mean, I can tell you there are things that on this planet that exist. I personally saw for at least 60 continuous seconds. I came face to face with a Yeti.
A Yeti?
A Yeti. Off of Interstate 5 at 4:20 in the morning. My wife was asleep. I was driving. We were on our way back to L.A. from visiting her family in Portland. And surrounding this Yeti were at least 6 deer, a complete family, a buck, a doe, and she had like 4 little babies. And they were all surrounding this Yeti. And he had his arms down at his side, and his palms were out. And his eyes, I swear to God, guys, his eyes were like glowing coals. And he was standing close enough so that when I passed by him, I got full detail because, catch this, guys, I don't know how to explain this. It was the most unbelievable experience I have ever had. No, the second most. When my car got within, let's say, 50 to 100 feet, see, I'm in the outside lane, I'm in the passing lane, coming downhill. I'm going like 65, 70 miles an hour, and I'm coming down to the bottom of a long hill that was probably a half a mile or maybe a mile high. Down at the very, very bottom, where the pavement suddenly straightens out, begins the grass and the gravel. And about 5, 6 feet, 7 feet maybe, off the gravel was this creature standing there with the deer. But when my car got close enough that my headlights picked him up, I swear to you, the whole thing slowed down in slow motion. And I got the best look. I communicated with it, that I saw the deer's eyes, and I got past it. And it wasn't until I purposefully pulled my head forward, because as I'm moving, I'm bending it to keep viewing, that it snapped back to real time. I have never been able to explain that. I've only told, I don't know, couple of audiences about that. But he clearly said to me, I'm thinking out loud. I'm racing down, and I see it in the headlights, and it hadn't slowed down yet. I'm racing toward it, and I said to myself, no way, because I was returning from a conference with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who's a dear friend of mine, who's written a couple of forwards for my books. I had just attended his UFO conference that he has every single year in Tucson, and I'm returning home because we drove from there. We went to see her family, and then we came down the 5. I was going south on the 5. And I had just seen an entire presentation on the subject of Yeti with slides and footprints and all of this, so it was fresh in my mind. So then I asked myself, Michael, John, was I hallucinating because I wanted to see one, or did I actually see one? See, all this stuff has been going through my head for years and years and years. You never, ever, ever forget an experience like that.
Well, Dr. Rand, maybe these Yetis are time travelers.
They could be any number of things. Whatever it was real. And I had nothing to drink, nothing to smoke. In fact, I hadn't even eaten. My stomach, I was hungry. I was thinking about getting in and getting to a breakfast stop, and then this. So I'm racing toward it, and I said to myself, "Wait, man, why don't you stop the car and get out? Maybe you could talk to it." I mean, I was actually thinking like that. And before I could finish the thought, guys, before I could even respond to my own thinking with a that was dumb or smart, it said to me, "Do not stop. Danger." That's all it said to me.
What do you mean? Your inner self told you that?
No, it was a message that flashed through my mind,
right?
Like an electronic message, but I heard it.
But it was
in my head,
from your own being, right?
It could be, but I don't think so. Because here's how I know that this thing was not an animated Roboton type of thing, and or it wasn't a projected image. You follow me? See, these are people. Oh, you just saw an image there. Okay. As my car is rolling past it, and I'm turning my head to keep it in sight, it turned his head in the opposite direction to follow me. You see how significant that is, guys?
Mm-hmm.
It was consciously interacting with me, so I knew that what it said to me came from it, and I did not stop. I kept right on going, and it took a half hour for me to calm down. In the meantime, my poor wife missed the entire thing. I couldn't get it.
She was sleeping.
Jesus. When she travels, boy, it's hard to get her awake. Once she goes to sleep, that's it. She's gone. And it's 4:30 in the morning, 4:20 in the morning. Anyway, I didn't mean to digress so greatly, but to say to you that I have seen and done things and had things happen because I've been allowed to experience these things, and as Michael knows, I'm a contactee. I have been since a very, very, very early age. I've been involved in a whole ET cultural exchange type of thing. I don't make a big deal of it. I'm only one of many, 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 many thousands of these late 1940, early 50s born children. I was born in 1939. I was born at Taurus.
And Dr. Rand and John, we've got to take one last break here, so I want to put you guys on hold really quick.
How you doing, Michael?
Good. Hey, how you doing, James?
Pretty good. How you doing, Dr. Rand and Mr. Donato?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, James.
Okay, well, about 7 years ago, I noticed that twice a year I was having a lot of static electricity on my hands, and I traced it down to, it was around the equinoxes. Like within 2 weeks of the equinox, I'd start sparking whenever I get out of the car or whatever, and 2 weeks after. So it started peaking in 2012. I was actually throwing 1-inch sparks off the end of my hand, and people at work refused to even, give me something metal in my hands. They'd put it down and tell me to go ahead and get it. And then after 2012, it basically disappeared. As even the recent equinox, absolutely no static electricity. Do either one of you guys have an idea of why there was no static electricity, or what happened in 2012 where I was throwing off 1-inch sparks and now there's nothing?
Well,
that's really
John,
strange.
This is very strange.
That.
Yeah.
I'm just. It could be. I mean, the human body does carry static charge, but in normal conditions, we pick up static charge on our body throughout the entire surface of our body as a result of walking across a carpet, for example, that has an excess of electrons, and the electrons then flow onto the surface of our body. And as you've all witnessed or experienced in your lifetime, on a cold winter day, for example, when you're about ready to touch the car handle on your door, all of a sudden a violent stinging spark occurs between your finger and the doorknob. That's the discharge of the static electricity that has been stored on your body, being released in one sort of mini micro lightning bolt to your car. That's a normal phenomenon, but what you're talking about is really, it would be probably the same phenomenon where your body picks up static electricity, that is an excess of electrons that reside all over the surface of your body. In your case, it sounds like you had a very abnormally great amount of electric charge on your body, and that's why it was discharging, your hands were discharging so violently. For this
where were you when Edison was trying to put his thing together, huh? That's a joke, guys.
Well, it's right.
Listen,
so what you
I got a thought on this.
Normal. Pardon me.
I got a thought on this.
Sure.
What's your first name again, sir?
James.
James.
Yep.
You're what I would call a collector. Your particular body probably operates at a much higher frequency, electromagnetically and spiritually, and I don't know beyond that.
Well, what gives me a clue are the equinox. What happens with the equinox is when the sun, when the Earth in its revolution around the sun sort of rotates on its precesses on it. I shouldn't say precess. No, that's not the right term. The Earth is actually tilted on its axis permanently, and as it goes around the sun, it sort of dips in one portion of its revolution dips down so that the northern hemisphere is now facing more of the sun's rays than the southern hemisphere, and that would be during the summertime. But during the equinox, as the Earth rises upward, now you have an equal, which is suggestive of the word equinox, you have an equal height or parallel comparison or relationship between the sun's equator and the Earth's equator. So at that point, you were picking up excessive charge. There must be a relationship, a reason for that. And I find it hard to understand. I could see theoretically why your position at the equinox would perhaps make you more electrified, but it just seems too fantastic to even try to draw a correlation. But there's got to be.
I got a question. I got a question for James.
Okay.
Are you looking forward to the next equinox event?
It doesn't even come to my mind anymore, because actually in February I found out that I actually have an implant in me that is actually giving off some kind of signal. So now my investigation is like, is this implant in me is what's caused that, whatever. Plus, also, I'm looking at the effects of all the aluminum in the air and in my body, and maybe that aluminum, because it's a non-metallic and possibly, electrostatic, and maybe the amount of the aluminum in my body is having an effect too, is what I'm working on.
I wish you would have mentioned that you had an implant earlier in the conversation, because that would have saved John and I trying to figure out a physical reason why. If you have an implant, which you may have, then that would account, I think, for a larger part of the mystery, because implants can do many different things. I know. I have one.
Mm-hmm. Well, the big mystery is, why was it sparking? It hurt. Some of them hurt back in 2012, and these guys, and me and them guys, and now there's nothing. And that's what I'm looking for. Why is there nothing? And why was it so high in 2012? And here we're expecting this planet to come in, and I'm thinking that it's this planet coming in and all this static electricity, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
Well, the year 2012. No, the year 2012 had a lot of mysteries surrounding it, from Aztec mysticism and Incan prophecies and Hopi prophecies and all kinds of things. I just want to say this to you. I would stay alert if I were you, because obviously whatever you have or whatever you're dealing with has to have a reason behind it. And that's what I would be concentrating on. If I was you, I'd be trying to figure out exactly what's going on, which you probably are. But I mean,
I was told just recently in February too that when I started going to all these UFO conferences, that I was actually abducted for the 4th time in my life. The other time was 3 times when I was at age 4. So I was taken again 7 years ago. Next thing I know, I'm going to all these UFO conferences and just leading from one synchronicity into the next.
How about welcome aboard, guy?
Right.
I'd embrace it. I can't feel anything bad for you, because you're living it and you don't seem damaged by it. I would say you're, at this point, you might be one of the privileged few, and I'll leave it go at that. Okay.
I'm actually trying to go to Tibet next month, so I'll leave it at that.
That'll be an interesting. That'll be in now. Why don't you go see if you can find your own Yeti?
Well, I am.
Okay. Well, good luck on your trip, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you for the call, James. And gentlemen, we've got another call here. We've got 216 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands.
Hi, this is member Truth Seeker 923. Actually joined.
Well, welcome aboard.
Love the show. My question is, what actually brought me to this chat room was the video with the French foreign minister stating that we have 500 days until climate chaos. Not a day later, he was also seen with John Kerry. What's your theory on what the climate chaos actually means?
I remember that he made the French Prime Minister stated back in May of 2014 that we have 500 days until we reach total global climate chaos. And as you can count, we're getting close to that 500-day mark.
It's 9/23 actually.
It's how many? I'm sorry.
9/23.
September 23rd.
Oh, really? September 23rd. Well, that's the date we keep on hearing all the time, isn't it? I wonder if they can predict asteroid strikes or near asteroid strikes to the day. I believe, especially when they're getting close, and it's gotten within a year. Last year they probably were able to predict a possible asteroid strike or a whole series of meteors associated with that asteroid bombarding the Earth, which is what happened actually in January or February of 2013 when that infamous meteor struck in Chelyabinsk, Russia. That meteor was an offshoot of multiple meteors that were being gravitationally dragged in by a huge asteroid. That asteroid was big news on the Weather Channel and on all the major media. They were talking about an asteroid back in that month, January or February of 2013, that was about to come very dangerously close to Earth. And on the very same day, the Chelyabinsk meteorite struck right in Russia. And the Weather Channel, I remember Al Roker of the Weather Channel was reading his lines that day, and he said, the NASA or the NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, says there is no connection between that meteor strike and the asteroid nearly passing Earth on the very same day. And Al Roker laughed and said, yeah, sure, right, there's no connection. So even he stepped out of his line and showed that, indicated to us that anybody who's thinking must realize that asteroid is pulling in a whole bunch of meteors, which, in fact, if you look at the news, you'll find that Cuba got hit with a meteor, and that very same day that Russia got hit with a meteor, and several other places on Earth got hit with meteors, which evidently were part of that same cluster that were being dragged in by the asteroid. So that could be the event that they're talking about. They could be predicting an asteroid strike, and they want to get the hell out of there and get under the ground in the bowels of Cheyenne Mountain before it happens. And I was talking about Queen Elizabeth. Somebody put out a report, which I have yet to verify, that Queen Elizabeth, well, they said Queen Elizabeth might not be alive right now. But what I'm thinking is Queen Elizabeth may be alive, but she may be in Cheyenne Mountain right now or getting prepared to go underground.
Hey, John,
and they have her double out there taking pictures in England.
And John, they've been saying that Bush Sr.'s been in bad health, which he don't look so good, but, you think people have speculated they're getting ready to put him away, too.
Well, yeah, I mean, whatever happens to him is really not of much interest to me. That man has perpetrated so much evil in his life.
Oh, yeah.
But the Queen, just look at it. We have to realize that when these power elites start going underground, that's when we have to be concerned. We have to start getting prepared ourselves. Now, people who are shallow-minded will say, hey, look, there's nothing I could do about it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to drink beer and have a good time. If we get hit by an asteroid, there's nothing I can do about it. Well, there are things we can do. Think about this. The vast majority of people on Earth in the face of an asteroid or a meteor strike will survive. And when they survive, there will be no food, there will be no water available in the stores at least. So there are plenty of things you can do to survive. You can store food, you can store water, you can store essential oils for maintenance of your health. You can store silver germicides, you can store iodine germicides. And you're going to have friends and neighbors banging at your door looking for food and water. So make sure you store a lot because you're going to want to help them out if you can and try to protect yourself from when they get a little bit too violent and desperate. So these are things we can do. We can prepare because you'll probably survive an asteroid strike.
You know, it brings to mind, I went through the 94 Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles area, and I was in a building that came down, and I remember I first heard the roar, woke me up out of a sound sleep. It sounded like you guys been down in the subway, right? And you hear that rumbling in the distance coming?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I've been in a abandoned subway before. I've never actually been in a working, functioning subway, but go ahead.
Well, it's a low rumble that starts to come, and then you feel the air. See, it's really strange. Okay. That vehicle, that train, is in a very small little cavity, traveling at, 89, sometimes 60, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, and it pushes air ahead of it because you're in a tunnel. So before you even see the train, you hear its rumble through the earth and the rails, and then you feel the wind coming at you. And unless you've been unless you've been down in the subway close to an oncoming train, you won't know what I'm talking about. But that's exactly how it felt. I came out of a dead sleep. It was 4:22 in the morning. I remember as soon as I came awake, I looked at the clock because I had been anticipating. I had been dreaming about earthquakes for a month, and lo and behold, I come out of the sleep, and I'm involved in a 6.8 earthquake.
Wow.
Nearly
Jason, you have psychic abilities because you were dreaming, obviously,
yes.
dreaming about earthquakes, and it occurred.
Yep.
That reminds me of my friend who I lost contact with. She used to work with me. Her name was Jean Marie, and she told me about signs that she saw. She only saw signs of tragedies in the future. Mm-hmm. Whenever she looked up in the sky, on those rare occasions, she would see a red cross in the sky. Mm-hmm. And after the red cross, soon after that, someone in her family died. And it happened again a second time, and maybe 2 or 3 times, she told me, when she knew it was going to be disaster, that red cross in the sky. And there was a psychic by the name of Alex Tanous, Tanous, who lived about 30 years ago. He was a professor in New York City. He was kind of a strange man, but he was also a psychic. And he was able to predict things, tragedies too, coming in the future. He predicted that there would be a pole shift, great disasters that he had envisioned, being a psychic. And this guy was so amazing. This will tie into what Jason was talking about before, about the Bermuda Triangle. There's a submerged pyramid. Obviously, the pyramid was built on land many centuries ago, before the sinking of Atlantis. And when
it was the westernmost point of contact. See, they colonated.
That's right.
They colonated all the way down to North and South Bimini. In fact, on the island of North Bimini, I'd love to put an excursion together. If you guys want to get together some explorers, I can.
Well, it's already been done, Jason. It's on YouTube.
The Fountain of Youth.
No, not that, but the pyramid, the submerged pyramid.
Yes.
I've got a video from 30 years ago, and it shows a sonar picture taken from a ship, which Alex Tanous discovered. And you know how he discovered it?
No.
In a psychic vision. Alex Tanous on film says, this man was introduced by the former actor and now deceased George Kennedy. Who remembers George Kennedy, the big guy who played some pretty famous roles in movies? Well, George Kennedy hosted this documentary, and he said, we wanted to find evidence of great Earth disasters that had occurred in the ancient past. So we went and found this man, Alex Tanous. Alex Tanous had a great, terrific track record for finding missing objects. And then you see Alex Tanous come on, and he says, so I was told to go and find this evidence of ancient disasters, and a part of me went out of my body and swam beneath the ocean. And my out-of-body self discovered this wonderful, fabulous, ancient city off the coast of Florida. I saw temples which you wouldn't have believed, so beautiful and majestic. I saw spiral staircases under the ocean. I saw pyramids. The whole thing was a wonderful ancient city. Of course, now my commentary is that he was seeing it as it existed then, many centuries ago, before it was encrusted with coral, as it is now. But George Kennedy then says, George Kennedy gets on the yacht with other explorers, and he says a lot of people didn't believe Alex Tannis when he talked about seeing this underground, undersea city that had been submerged. But when we went to the exact coordinates off the coast of Florida that he had given us in his psychic vision, in his out-of-body experience, we found exactly what he had said that he found. We stopped right at these coordinates, this location off the coast, the Bimini Road, off the coast of Florida, and we saw a 1,000-yard long wall. And also we went to travel and to the point of he said this pyramid was located, and they looked down, they took a sonar picture of the pyramid, it showed on the videotape, and
sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
No, we're about almost out of time, guys. That was our caller. And Truth Seeker, thank you so much for the call. I wish we had more time, but we don't. So Dr. Rand and John, I'd like to give you both the opportunity to get out anything that you like, and we need to do this again sometime very soon.
Let's have another show, John. I had a great time.
So did I. I think it was really exciting because we stimulate each other's knowledge.
Yeah, and we've got many cross-referenced experiences, so it's not like one of us is hanging out there like an idiot, you know?
Right, and this information is so vital to many people nowadays. It's not only fascinating, but it's life-saving information.
It is.
Well,
it is. So yeah,
I'd like to leave you with this: be a very sound mind for this next year. I'm not sure that this will end within the next 12 months. Not fatally like John's possibly referring to. I'm talking about we're going to get through the date. We talked about this last time, Michael. Everybody out there, if you're listening, scribble this date down. September 18th, 2016. I'm going to go on record on or about that date, either in Mexico City or Veracruz, or possibly in both regions simultaneously. There will be a visual confirmed series of extraterrestrial type ships that come into the atmosphere and set down. And that is because Mexico City, unfortunately, is sinking in Mexico City is built on a huge, hundreds of miles wide remains of a caldera of a volcano. It was the ancient lake bed of it. It was once filled with water. And Mexico City, as a city, has been slowly sinking for the last 25 years. And the ETs, I believe, have pledged to help Mexico City in any way using their technology. I don't know what the technology is. I'm picking all of this up from my buzz and chatter that come through me. So once that happens, it changes the whole ball game on the planet. Aside from all the terror, and aside from all the financial problems and the wars and all the drama going on with the government and political candidates, you know what, guys? I'm getting a really bad headache from how weird everything is getting out there. Am I the only one feeling that way?
No, you and me both, Dr. Rand, absolutely. And what I'm going to do is we'll set something up for the first or second week of August. That's when I have some openings. And we'll
I love it. John, I'd love it. I'd love it.
Yes, I would too. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Rand. If you want to give out website or anything like that, you want to send people?
Jump in real quick. It's returntoplanetex.com. You can get my book, Return to Planet X. It's also on Amazon.com. It's half price. I think they even pick up the shipping. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they do. Return to Planet X. Everything that we've talked about tonight, guys, is contained in that book. And Michael, thank you so much, and Autumn, for your support over the last 6-7 years. We went all the way through our third printing. I still have some books left. If anyone's interested, I'd be happy to sign a copy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rand. We will definitely set something up in the next couple of weeks. And John DiNardo, your turn. Anything you want to finish with?
No, I think Jason has said it all, and I'm really happy to have been with him tonight. He's such a great spirit and has such deep knowledge, and I'm so happy to have been with you too, Michael, with your gracious hospitality to all of us. So I think you guys have said it all. We are just.
Can I do a real quick shout out?
Your mind and his presence, his invisible presence in your mind.
All right.
Could I do a quick shout out to one of Michael's loyal fans,
Sure.
Mr. Brett Lloyd? If you're out there listening, Michael, he's a rabid fan of your show. His name is Brett Lloyd. He's in Albuquerque. He listens every night. So we just want to do a quick shout-out to him.
All right. Well, hello, Brett Lloyd, and thank you so much for listening to the show. We love having you as well. Call in some night. We'd love to hear from you. All right, guys.
Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. Folks, that's going to do it for us. What a show tonight.
By astronomers around the world. They had seen perturbations, irregularities, or plucking or pulling out of their orbits of the outer planets Uranus and Neptune. These are large gas giant planets, very massive. And for some object to have the gravitational pull to pull them out of their orbits, well, that mystery object must be very large. And that's what the government was very much concerned about. They had this Pioneer 10, they never released, to my knowledge, they never released the findings from the Pioneer 10's space journey into deep space, past Pluto, into beyond the outer bounds of our solar system. They never released the findings of this Pioneer 10, which was sent on a trajectory to pass by where they had calculated this object would be. And consequently, their reasoning was, the mission was to see if there would determine whether there was a perturbation or a pulling of this trajectory of Pioneer 10 out of its trajectory, which would indicate that there was some massive body exerting some great gravitational pull upon the Pioneer 10 space probe. And I believe they indeed found that this probe was pulled out of its trajectory. And there's so much evidence to indicate that they knew about it. There was the infrared astronomical satellite that was launched specifically to detect this massive dwarf star, which they had actually declared they were doing. They declared that they were sending this infrared astronomical satellite up back in 1983, and they actually declared the discovery of this object, which was their mission. It was these two announcements, the launching of the infrared astronomical satellite and its discovery of Planet X, were both made. These announcements were both made in the largest newspapers of the United States. One was January 30th, 1983, at the launching of the infrared astronomical satellite in the New York Times. The second announcement was when this Planet X had been discovered, and that was reported in the Washington Post in December 30th, 11 months to the day after the launching of it. So to get back to your question, they know all about it. They've been tracking it all of these decades, and they see that the devastation that will occur on Earth.
So Okay, I'm going to give one more shot for John DiNardo, too.
Hello.
Good evening, John. How are you?
Hi, Michael. I'm sorry I had my ringer turned off.
Oh, okay.
That's why I missed your first call.
I thought that maybe you and Dr. Rand were on the phone with each other.
No.
All right. Well, welcome aboard. And I don't have Dr. Rand here yet. I'm having a trouble getting his line to come through for some reason. It keeps telling me it's busy. So I don't know if it's off the hook or what the deal is, but I'm going to try to get him on here. I got Autumn working on that now. So I figure we'll start with you. And let me welcome you back to Late Night in the Midlands. And John, we're live. People want to know about a lot of things. These booms that everybody's hearing, Jade Helm that's going on, and all these different things that are going on. Some would say it's because they're preparing, and I'd have to ask you, preparing for what?
Well, I've been studying this for a long time, Michael, and what I've found is that the power elite, the men who control the world, and I won't go into details because you and your audience know all about the global ruling elite who are determined to take power and rule the world with a one world government. These men know about the approach of Planet X. They have known about it for many decades. The search for Planet X goes back to the 1970s, over 40 years ago, when the NASA, under the direction and under the orders of the power elite who have always ruled our government, NASA was ordered to send up a probe, which was two probes, which were called the Pioneer 10 and 11 space probes. Pioneer 11 was simply a control probe which was sent in the opposite direction, but Pioneer 10 was the one that was sent out to detect a gravitational pull upon this space probe Pioneer 10 as a result of the calculations of the position of this massive body which they had known was out there, which they had known for 2 centuries nearly, that was out there because it had been this mystery body called Planet X had been detected ever since the early 1800s. We see it now. We see the evidence now. We've been seeing it for over the last 10 years. Thousands of record high temperatures, thousands of record lows, literally thousands. I mean, the Weather Channel has announced this at times, and I have recorded it. Thousands of record snowfalls and record rainfalls and record large-size hailstorms, etc. So we know it's coming, and the government knows it's coming. Naturally, they're going to get ready. They're planning to clamp down on the public because, as Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota, had reported in his television documentary, which was titled Apocalypse 2012, in his conspiracy theory series, Jesse Ventura reported that they were indeed going underground into the bowels of the Cheyenne Mountain, where the NORAD headquarters had been, and they're planning to, in fact, there was a report in the Daily Mail, the London, England Daily Mail newspaper, that they're really expanding and opening up this underground Cheyenne Mountain shelter for the government. Of course, it was stated in the report that it was for the purpose of reopening it, and in fact, it had never been closed. Well, anyway, Jade Helm, I believe, is obviously a way to clamp down, a campaign to clamp down on the public, to suppress the public when food riots occur. I mean, I'm trying to be honest and not too alarmist.
Right.
But just try to be honest without exaggerating the facts. Glenn Beck, I had posted a Glenn Beck program when he was on Fox TV. I mean, that was pretty high visibility, mainstream TV. a number of years ago. I think it was about 5 years ago, and he was very popular at the time. I'm not a fan of Glenn Beck, but the fact that he publicized this at least several times about food riots. He showed films of the government, U.S. troops training to suppress the public, where they were using actors, not really actors, but civilians to play the part of the civilians that would be encountered by the Army, U.S. Army, during times of food riots. And Glenn Beck said on his program, I believe the U.S. Army, I believe them when they say they're planning for food riots. I believe that there are going to be food riots. And then he went into a whole series of programs where he sat down and he said, look, what we've got to do is start storing food now, start planning to survive what's coming. Day after day of constant rain. Now we're getting the same thing in Florida. And, well, anyway, I want to get back to your question. I don't want to digress too much, but the evidence is so clear that things are happening. And what we have to do is prepare for it. Simply store food, store all the things that we're going to be needing. It doesn't take much to go to the grocery store and get canned white meat chicken and canned, I used to buy canned seafood, but I don't anymore because of the Fukushima disaster with all the radioactive waste that has been dumped in the oceans. But you can still buy Vienna sausages, for example, which are relatively cheap, and canned white meat chicken, and it's protein for survival. Store water, because water is the most important substance that we will need. And I've been saving empty bottles, plastic bottles for years, and filling them with water. I still have many in my basement that I have neglected to fill yet, so I've got to get that finished. But I still have a lot of bottles of water stacked up in my basement. These are things that we have to do. Well, I don't know where to go from here except to tell people before we go into, rather than scare people, I want to give people the consolation, the assurance that the God who loves them, who created them, is watching over it, all of us. And all we need to do is be aware of his invisible presence. This is the faith that you've often heard about, faith in God. They never tell you what constitutes faith in God, but faith is simply contemplating the invisible but real and tangible presence, contemplating the real presence of our Creator, who keeps our hearts beating every minute, every second. So that's what we need to do, is simply walk through life feeling the presence of God. It's not easy because we get distracted, and I do all the time. I get distracted, but you just do that and prepare yourself by acquiring the physical things that you need and caring for others, and be resolved in your heart that you will help others, those who don't have the sense to prepare, that you're going to help them in any way you can when these tribulations occur.
Right. And John, if you could, I don't know if you have a volume or anything on your end, if you could just speak a little louder into the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. No, that's okay.
I thought, okay. Yeah, you're coming. Well, they took him off the air. I guess he was getting a little bit too honest. And so there's more evidence for you that the Jade Helm is a plan to suppress the population, and it may be coming soon. I'm hearing a lot of reports, and you are too, that September is some kind of a mystery date, where an ominous date where something may occur. All we can do is get prepared. We see, I'm looking at the Weather Channel, and I'm looking at the jet stream, which is becoming so undulated and convoluted. That tells me that Earth is really in serious trouble in terms of meteorological severe weather events. And that jet stream seems to be getting so crazy and so unnatural in its contortions. Normally, 30 years ago, the jet stream was rather smooth and horizontal, because the jet stream is that flow of air from west to east that goes across the northern hemisphere of the planet Earth. And it used to be rather horizontal and smooth, and that's why you could expect moderate temperatures without very extreme excursions in temperature and in weather. All those years, you remember when you were younger, as a child, we never had such severe weather as we have now. Now, severe weather is the norm.
No, it's gotten so bad, John, that even the weather forecasters can't forecast the weather.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, just today, a couple days ago, on the Weather Channel, as an example, one example out of thousands, they stated that NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, announced that the year 2015 or 2014, I'm not sure, was the hottest year on record ever, since they've been keeping records which goes back to the 1800s. And we're seeing all kinds of records broken. I mean, I won't even go into the details because I'd be here all night telling you about the nations that have been flooded out: Australia, Pakistan, the state of Texas was, this is really weird, this is really wild. The state of Texas had been in the worst drought in its history last year, as you recall. I mean, it was so dry, the ground was cracking, houses were sinking in because the ground was losing its firmness due to dryness. A record drought. All of a sudden, there occurred record rainfall, to the point where, in a very short time, that drought-stricken state began to almost float away with floods.